Good morning, local peacemakers and loyal rumblers. It is August 5, 2022, a great day for our future. We have 3,038 days left until Thanksgiving Day 2030. And today's quote comes from C.S. Lewis, a man that fought in World War I, the author of Chronicles of Narnia and the friend that convinced J.R.R. Tolkien to publish The Lord of the Rings. He would also be known as the most reluctant convert because of his staunch stance against the existence of the Christian God. During World War II, it was his perspective that battled the rhetoric of the Axis powers as they used radio to spread their message of fear, dominance, and the ultimate annihilation of the Jews and their supporters. At the time, there were two broadcasters dominating the airwaves, Hitler and C.S. Lewis. Roosevelt had his fireside chats, Churchill had his immortalized moments, but C.S. Lewis, I feel, highlighted a better reason to win the war, eternalized in the following quote: "There are no ordinary people. It is immortals whom we joke with, work with, marry, snub, and exploit." Here in the age of retrospection, I feel the other side could never manifest the weight behind those words. Because if we tune into this framework, we could open ourselves to transform our lives in a way evil diminishes and good prevails. So far, the only reasoning behind any rally cry I hear on the other side is, "They hurt my pride. The other side must die." Here at the World Peace for Free, we believe life is long. So we learn every day at the grace of our own pace. I say, with the technology we have today, why not? Why war? Why can't we just talk? The way Alan Watts said in the last episode we shot. It says here, "I can't think of anything else. Improvise something nice about what your Zoomer nephew taught you about social media. The millennial, the generation that social media came from. Then do the YouTube intro properly." First of all, Time Traveling Minister is a character I play. In real life, I'm Uncle Eric to all the kids of the friends that decided to have kids. I think about that in the body of a 32-year-old, wondering, dude, yeah, our finite years our finite formative years are totally finite. Like it's really in my face. And a lot of people experienced something that experience loss that you can't recover. The one loss in life that humans can't recover from, which is death. When somebody leaves your family because of an illness or God forbid anything else, any kind of suffering. It's tough, but that's also kind of how this conversation came about, because it happened recently with my family, and of course kids will ask questions. And the thing about this conversation is just what was mind-blowing about this conversation was how simple this kid could just understands the significance of how we could record ourselves face to face and also talk to people from across the globe with our faces. And this is the first time, this is what blew my mind. He realized this is the first time in human history that we could ever do this. He doesn't have to search through journals that how we had to go through. He didn't have to be inspired by going to museums and by physically going to the museums. He could just get the information he wants on in our information box, these smartphones that we have. And that to me blows my mind, because how much I've taken that for granted. Seriously. I remember when it would take 5 minutes to load up a 2-minute video on our dial-up and the DSL networking, and now we're at Wi-Fi, and there's signals penetrating our DNA right now as we move on in this new world of information. And which I say all the time, this is probably the end of the information age and the introduction of the age of retrospection, where we could look through all the data that we have accumulated as a human society and sift through them to find the best ideas. I remember an interview between Craig Ferguson and Stephen King. That's where I think about that quote all the time. The idea that good ideas stick. And if you're sifting, and what writing is, it's a sifting of ideas and trying to find the best solutions. And somebody described the show to me, and it's inside of the description in our YouTube channel now, about how this platform kind of helps us to find and promote the best ideas for peace. I mean, what's great about that is the only way I could have found that inspiration was through conversation. Once again, our motto here is to promote this idea that why war? Why should we? Why can't we just talk? Why should we war? Why can't we just talk? In this age where we could literally have our words translated by a computer into another language far across the globe. That was the whole point of Google, wasn't it? That was kind of the point of us not caring about the signage of our terms and conditions, and just agree a way to listen to our conversations. But there's good that came out of it, because eventually, ultimately, what Alan Watts said in our first episode, it holds. Like, what is the next step after roads? It's a very simple question, because that he posed in the last video, because there's a world where we could possibly all have our own flying cars, and if we all have our own flying cars, why would we need roads? Maybe we could live literally anywhere in the world and still have access to healthcare. That's the reason why we choose to live in cities these days. But who knows what we could have in the future? But I know that the Zoomer generation has all these ideas, but what's sad is, a lot of adults don't take them seriously, and they all are attached to this network of intelligence that we take for granted. And because I don't know, maybe we got cynical along the way, but that's the reason why we have this show, and that's probably the best part, to start doing the YouTube intro. Here we go. Properly. All right. World peace right now seems expensive, so thanks for sharing our show. World Peace for Free, the world's first ad-free, non-fear-mongering newscast. I'm your time-traveling host, and you're in the future, so if you haven't yet, please subscribe so we can be the biggest YouTube channel not part of the ad money program. If you don't know, our show runs on Hypermail. Okay, good. Well, if you don't know, our show runs on Hypermail, which lets us talk to our fans in the past, future, and present, here in the age of retrospection. So, fill our DMs with events you want immortalized on our Instagram timeline at World Peace for Free, #BeNeighborly. Now, let's check out all this news sent by you. I hold in my hand letters. Hermetically sealed messages from hyperspace. I could read them to you by the power vested in me by Cornelius Cybot. Aruba, Jamaica, I want to take. This one. Oh, this one is shows a future without plastics. I don't throw it out this time. We just start I'm not supposed to be reading the transcript. What am I doing?
So if the world continues at its current pace, by 2050...
I should let everybody know this video is made by Freethink, a channel on YouTube that focuses on future technology, and the release date of this video is September 28, 2021. And once again, I told you this clip is about a future without plastics. Here we go. Boop.
There's projected to be more plastic than fish by weight in the ocean.
On average, the world produces 380 million tons of plastic each year. Only 9% of it is recycled. It's estimated that about 20 billion pounds of plastic flows into the ocean every year. Plastic that can take hundreds of years to degrade, if it ever does. But what if we could make biomaterials that work as well or better than plastics?
It turns out there are naturally occurring microorganisms in the ocean that eat greenhouse gas as their food and turn it into PHB inside of their cells. When you extract it, it's meltable. It's a material that's strong, dishwasher safe, all the things that make plastic great, and we call it air carbon.
Imagine being able to buy products that perform like plastics, but break down harmlessly in the environment. Well, you actually can. These air carbon products are starting to show up at Shake Shacks and Targets across the US. The question is, what's it going to take to get these everywhere? This is Make It Count, a series on environmental innovations and the math it takes to bring them to the masses. Most plastics today are produced from petroleum, but there are two main alternatives. The first is PLA. It's made from sugar. The problem with PLA is that it's still synthetic, and it won't break down easily in the environment. The other common alternative is known as PHA, a common variant of which is the molecule PHB.
PHB is a molecule that's made in almost all known living things, including the human body. It just so happens that if you extract PHB, you can turn it into a fine white powder, and because it's meltable, you can use it to replace plastic. The big difference, though, is that plastic is a synthetic material. In other words, it's not produced in nature. PHB is different. It's made in nature, so nature sees it like a food source and will eat it and degrade it like a banana peel.
New Light has figured out how to reproduce a process that occurs naturally in the ocean, where microorganisms consume air and greenhouse gases dissolved in salt water to produce PHB, and then turn that into powder, pellets, and ultimately finished products. While that certainly sounds really cool, making that process work at scale is a journey that took Mark and his team 18 years to figure out.
We're aiming to produce the products that have the most impact. And one of our goals is to get to about a 20 billion pound per year production rate, because that's approximately the amount of plastic currently flowing into the ocean. We want to displace that with air carbon.
The key to the widespread adoption of biomaterials is price parity, the point when their price is equal to or less than traditional plastics. Currently, biomaterials are 20 to 50% more expensive.
We make such a small fraction of this coming on, trillion pound per year market. To really have the impact that we want, it's going to take a lot of work and a lot of steel to get there.
As we go forward now, we're going to take this kind of like our solar panel and just do more of these in a row in a tank farm.
The cost of plastic is largely driven by the price of petroleum, which is pretty low at the moment. Plastics are also a well-established technology, manufactured all over the world. In order to catch up, companies like New Light need to start achieving economies of scale.
And so the next decade, we're going to be putting as much capacity in the ground as we can so that we can supply as many people as possible. We have a very clear path to being able to provide real volume. So scale is the name of the game right now.
There are other concerns about many biomaterials. The biggest is competition with food supplies. As more crops are used to produce biomaterials, there's less available for food, and the price of food goes up. But air carbon doesn't use food crops.
The nice thing about using greenhouse gas is it allows you to avoid the use of food crops or other things that would generate environmental damage. If you think about it, greenhouse gas is really the feedstock of choice for nature. And so we think it's nice to be able to harness that as a carbon resource.
Right now, bioplastics account for just 1% of the 368 million tons of plastic produced annually. When can we expect to see a shift?
Look, it's not going to be easy, and it certainly isn't automatic, but it's possible. Air carbon is currently being sold in over 1,900 locations across the US, in Target pilot locations. Our goal is, hopefully within the next decade, to get into as many places as we can with the goal to displace plastics with a natural material.
Most biomaterials are years away from beating the price of plastic. But entrepreneurs like Mark are doing everything they can to bring those technologies to us sooner.
Every idea was viewed as quasi-impossible until it became the norm. Ultimately, I want to make air carbon the most competitive technology in the world, bar none.
There you go. What you guys just saw was a quick documentary on by Freethink, and I think that this is the story, like the idea of this segment, that their segment is to demonstrate and share with you just how much, share with you the numbers that needs to happen in order for this idea to become mainstream and normalized. Oh, well, that's probably my bias. I would love for this to be normalized because look what he talks about. He's using there. Imagine a material out there that will go back into nature and nature will treat it as such, not, oh, this is plastic, yeah, reject, reject, reject. It'll accept it back into the soil and things can continue normally. Now, when I did some research as I was going, I checked that out and I saw that they're not the only company that's out there. There's a lot of companies in Canada and Finland as well. This is a global effort. And that's the curiosity. It took them 18 years to kind of figure out their ideas at scale. And that's 2 decades. It's almost 2 decades. But we're here in the future with AI. And I just remembered I have to read the message that was attached to this clip. Here we go. Dear Time Traveling Minister, I like what you're doing and how you're doing it. Maybe this video is future-y enough to open the show. Can you imagine a world without plastic? Ever hear about microplastics? I heard somewhere that normal people eat about a credit card of plastic a day. Oh my goodness. It messes up our hormones and DNA. And this clip came out a year ago. Do you think we could have a segment where you could check on the progress of these innovations? Sincerely, Professor X and Cerebro. That's clever. Clever, but didn't make me laugh. But I appreciate the effort. For those of you that are watching, I enjoy those dumb name bro jokes. Anyway, yeah. So I like that idea. I really like that idea. I just need to, like, once again, I'm just one of those guys that I have to figure out a way how to implement it that's brand friendly toward the brand, and it takes a long time. I should just say that I'm a perfectionist, but I hear you, and I think that's a great idea. I am gonna try to implement something about that soon, and that's all I have to say about that clip. Everything I said before that as well. We're living in a future where we could, like my nephew pointed out, a Zoomer nephew. He pointed out that we could, with social media, we could connect with others with that are thinking the same things a lot more quicker than, say, back in the day of trains, wires, and freeways and roads. That's specific, trains and wires, because that's all we had. And now we're wireless, so the possibilities are endless. There's no need for this kind of animosity that we have between each other when we could slow down. We could take our time when we are learning about things. We don't have to normalize criticism and chaos that it brings. The criticism and chaos that it brings. All right, let's check out this next one. This one answers, why is it still so hard to talk about vaccines? Okay, let's check this out. Oh, it's Russell Brand.
Pfizer have just released a 55,000-page document about vaccines and their efficiency, even though the Food and Drug Administration wanted to delay the release by 75 years, basically, after everyone alive now is dead. So we're asking, why is it so difficult to talk openly about vaccines?
All right, let's give the description here, and also a reminder, fact check and blah 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 of COVID vaccines and misinformation. Boo boo doo boo doo. 2 million views, good for you, man. All right, so this video was released March 22, 2022. And it's by Russell Brand. He has 5. Good for you, man. That's really awesome because I remember during the pandemic, we were all trying to figure out our new selves after our reset, and a little reset, not the great reset. And then we'll have a whole topic about that later on. I appreciate your inquiries about my opinion on that. Let's wait a little bit. Let's share the show. Let's share the basics of the show first before we go into tough stuff like that. But let's go ahead and see this clip.
Hello Hello there, you 5.3 million awakening wonders. There's a light within you and it's getting brighter. I know how challenging it is to be alive. I know what you face. I know what you have to get through. We're all on our individual journeys, but here we can coalesce and come together, communicate openly and ask the difficult questions. Have the difficult conversations. Today's conversation being, of course, why did the Food and Drug Administration want to delay information about vaccine efficiency by 75 years? Why is that in a climate where many people are skeptical and doubtful? One environment where people are neither skeptical or doubtful is at my live shows. You can come and see me if you're in the UK, or if you want to travel here, you can do that now. You can come see me in a couple of weeks in Carlisle. You can see me in Newcastle, Stockton-on-Tees, Glasgow, Plymouth, Bristol, all over this beautiful country in fantastic places. See me live. More than just stand-up comedy, an opportunity to ask me questions and meditate. If you want to do things like that, that's literally up to you, as are all things, apparently, other than openly discussing vaccines. Now, as I always have to say to you on our current beloved platform, we have to be careful about what we say. I'm not offering you medical advice. I'm not making any suggestions to you as to what you should do for your health, for your family's health. What I'm doing here is looking at a very interesting story. The story being that the Food and Drug Administration wanted to delay the release of documents pertaining to the efficacy of vaccines and information around their trials, side effects, for 75 years. But Pfizer have released a 55,000 word document due to a judge saying that they had to release it. So that's good. Once in a while, there are positive things that come out of these stories. You think, well, that's good. There's a democratic check and balance in place there that's led to some transparency. But is it total transparency? And what's the resistance? Let's get into the story. In a 55,000 page set of documents released in the last few weeks, the US Food and Drug Administration Center for Biologics Evaluation and Research, CBER, is for the first time allowing the public to access data Pfizer submitted to the FDA from its clinical trials in support of a COVID-19 vaccine license. This follows US District Judge Mark T. Pittman's decision on January the 6th to deny the request from the FDA to suppress the data for the next 75 years, which the agency claimed was necessary in part because of its limited resources. We've got so few resources in the pharmaceutical industry. It's been a tough couple of years, tightening the belts. We've barely scraped together a few pennies. What with conditions, we've all been hit quite hard by the pandemic over here in the pharmaceutical industry. Would you give us a bit of time to get ourselves together? Sure. How long? Well, just, I don't know, 2-3 generations so that everyone alive now would be dead. What that in itself suggests is that there's something to hide. I'm not saying that there's something to hide. I'm saying a request to delay the release of information by 75 years doesn't feel like transparency. And querying that doesn't make you a conspiracy theorist. That makes you someone who makes rational evaluations based on data. This is from those conspiracy theorist wacko cowboy loonies. Oh, the British Medical Journal. Hey, what should we put in today? Let's put in the lollipops and magic. Let's put in the unicorns are real. In the pages of the British Medical Journal, God bless you, Your Majesty, a decade ago, in the middle of a different pandemic, it came to light that governments around the world had spent billions stockpiling antivirals for influenza that had not been shown to reduce the risk of complications, hospital admissions or death. The majority of trials that underpinned regulatory approval and government stockpiling of oseltamivir, better known as Tamiflu, was sponsored by the manufacturer. Most were unpublished. Those that were published were ghostwritten by writers paid by the manufacturer. The people listed as principal authors lacked access to the raw data, and academics who requested access to the data for independent analysis were denied. Complicated case, Watson. The Tamiflu saga heralded a decade of unprecedented attention to the importance of sharing clinical trial data. Public battles for drug company data, transparency campaigns with thousands of signatures, strengthened journal data sharing requirements, explicit commitments from companies to share data, new data access website portals, and landmark transparency policies from medicines regulators all promised a new era in data transparency. Progress was made, but clearly not enough. The errors of the last pandemic are being repeated. Memories are short. Today, despite the global rollout of COVID-19 vaccines and treatments, the anonymised participant-level data underlying the trials for these new products remain inaccessible to doctors, researchers, and the public, and are likely to remain that way for years to come. doctors, researchers, and the public. Can the public see? No, those idiots. We don't trust them. We're not going to tell them anything. What about researchers? It would really help with the research. No, they come to their own conclusions. In my files with their dirty little hands. What if they've had a jam sandwich? All right. What about doctors? Doctors? I don't trust those guys in a white coat, stethoscope. Pooey. This is morally indefensible for all trials, but especially for those involving major health interventions. It's indefensible morally. All right, we'll do it immorally then. Oh, sorry, I didn't realise you were willing to behave it. Sorry, carry on. Especially as it involved major public health interventions. I think that a lot of scepticism around vaccines came from people that were uncertain about the unprecedented scale of what was happening. I remember rather fondly the enthusiasm of the beginning of the pandemic, where in spite of our shared fear, there was at least a sense of collective duty that we all had to obey government edicts because life was at stake. The life of people we didn't know, strangers, loved ones, whoever. That life is important, and above all else, we're here to protect one another and love one another. I'm laughing because elsewhere in society, you don't see those values playing out. But I, for one, was optimistic to see that happen. As things went on and the medical solutions began to present themselves, it was interesting to see how it was conveyed through the media and what kind of information was verboten, what kind of things you couldn't talk about. Now, down the line, the narrative has altered. Of course, global circumstances have shifted, interestingly. And also, there are things that you couldn't talk about that you now can talk about. Natural immunity, Wuhan lab leak theory, all things that once upon a yesterday were regarded entirely as the domain of the crackpot, tinfoil hat wearing nutters, right? But now the narrative is changing. So when you have a situation where the British Medical Journal are saying that these are morally indefensible actions, the way these trials have been handled, how do you now regard the attitudes of the sceptical or people that were anti-vax? And by anti-vax, just to be clear, I don't mean people that are anti-vaccines. Oh no, that's not what anti-vax means. People that were sceptical about mandates, because many people that are themselves vaccinated were circumspect about the application of mandates and the negative impact that would have, often on communities that are already poor or disadvantaged in some other ways, or indeed people from any background that just believe in bodily autonomy. So it's interesting to hear the British Medical Journal respond to this information in this way. These are not my opinions. This is me reading from the British Medical Journal and applying that information to a narrative we've all been living within to one degree or another for the last couple of years. I should point out, of course, that the British government were holding parties during most of that time, so not everyone was living within those restrictions. Among regulators, the US Food and Drug Administration is believed to receive the most raw data, but does not proactively release them. Why do we even need an adverb, proactively release them? You don't have to proactively release them. Just release them. People can read the information for themselves. Who? Well, I don't know, the public? Researchers? No. Doctors?
I should just stop. Oh, I'm not gonna stop. I'm gonna continue the text, and I know that I say that I'm not here to. I'm not that guy that. I don't want to interrupt too much, but I do want to let everybody, all our listeners, know. Like, remember, these people that write these journals, they're not. They're human beings too. They're human beings too. And they have to choose words that they feel will convey what they need to express or what they're told to express. And these people aren't, well, they are paid to do that. And sometimes what they release is just what they're asked of. And we're in a world of a lot of information. Denzel Washington asked one day in an interview saying, what did he say? He said, "We're about to find out if too much information is good for us," and that's like, I don't know if we're gonna find out. I think we're gonna figure out how to adapt to it, and I feel like it's gonna augment our experience as humans for generations to come if we do it right.
The FDA is producing data only for Pfizer's vaccine. Other manufacturers' data cannot be requested. Why? Just can't? Industry, which holds the raw data, is not legally required to honour requests for access from independent researchers. Sometimes people say, Russell, you're not making enough suggestions for how to change reality. Well, watch the videos more carefully, because I'm always making suggestions, and here's another one. That shouldn't be allowed. Regulate that right now. You do have to. As well as access to underlying data, transparent decision making is essential. For those of you watching this, and I don't mean you, our beloved 5.3 million who I treasure and cherish and want to help shine, I mean people that watch this stuff deliberately with an antagonistic agenda, particularly and specifically to box this off as anti-vax. That's anti-vax. He's a conspiracy theorist. Here's what I'm not saying. I'm not saying you shouldn't take the vaccine. I don't mind. I'm not saying the vaccines don't work. I don't know. What I'm saying is there's clear evidence that there's a lack of transparency that the British Medical Journal says is immoral. Immoral. And that leads to at least skepticism, sometimes cynicism, possibly hesitancy, sometimes in a climate where we know how Big Pharma have behaved in the past, downright doubt and resistance. Can you see why that might be happening under these circumstances? Wouldn't it be nice to hear, hey, listen, look, I know you're worried about this stuff. Here's all the data. There's all the data. Check it out. Read it for yourself. We're so confident in this product. We're so confident in this situation and our decisions that you can just read what you want and then you can decide based on... What's wrong with that? Do you want to buy a car? Can I have a look at it? No. What? Why are you a conspiracy theorist? No, just like look at the car before I buy it. You can't look at that car. What are you? A pervert? A right-wing conspiracy theorist? No, I just want to look at the car, have a look around it, see if it works and that. No, you can't.
Every day,
it's private. You can have a look in 75 years. Yeah, but by then, 75 years you can look. Otherwise, you're a conspiracy theorist. What are you? An anti-carer? Are you? Are you an anti-carer? I don't even know what you're trying to say. I'm trying to buy the car. 75 years. I'll see you in 75 years, you bloody conspiracy theorist. Where's your tin hat? Big Pharma is the least trusted industry. At least 3 of the many companies making COVID-19 vaccines have past criminal and civil settlements costing them billions of dollars. It's only a civil dispute. What about those criminal ones? Oh, no, there are some criminal ones as well. But still, would you trust us? We'll tell you in 75 years whether you were right to or not. One pleaded guilty to fraud. Did you do fraud?
I love news
We did
from
do
this
that.
guy.
Guilty. Other companies have no pre-COVID track record. Have you done anything before? Not really. No, but just what you've been doing. I don't know, just work for my uncle. Now the COVID pandemic has minted many new pharma billionaires and vaccine manufacturers have reported tens of billions in revenue. Can we see the data? Still no. The BMJ supports vaccination policies based on sound evidence. As the global vaccine rollout continues, it cannot be justifiable or in the best interest of patients and the public that we are left to just trust in the system, with the distant hope that the underlying data may become available for independent scrutiny at some point in the future. The same applies to treatments for COVID-19. Transparency is the key to building trust and an important route to answering people's legitimate questions about the efficacy and safety of vaccines and treatments and the clinical and public health policies established for their use. 12 years ago, we called for the immediate release of raw data from clinical trials. We reiterate that call now. Very intelligently, the British Medical Journal are saying this is not something that's specific to the pandemic and the treatments of the pandemic. These are here's a word, principles. Data must be available when trial results are announced, published, or used to justify regulatory decisions. That seems reasonable. We've made a regulatory decision. What did you base it on? Some data. Can we see that data? No. Why not? Well, it's private. But how can we trust you? We'll tell you in 75 years why you were right to trust us. There is no place for wholesale exemptions from good practice during a pandemic. That's the least time you want it, isn't it? That's like, oh no, there's an unprecedented crisis. Do you know what we should do? Let's shut down the old transparency and all start acting weird and freaky. And if anyone questions us, they're the problem. Yeah, that's a better system, rather than transparency and open discourse as requested by the oldest medical journal in the world. The public has paid for COVID-19 vaccines through vast public funding of research. Right, there's your money for that car. Can I have a look at it? No, 75 years. Well, I've given you the money. No, you should be a bit more trusting. Why don't you trust me? I do trust you. Just could I look at the data as well? Because I'm an adult and everything. No, 75 years. And it's the public that takes on the balance of benefits and harms that accompany vaccination. The public, therefore, has a right and entitlement to those data, as well as to the interrogation of those data by experts. Does that sound to you like reasonable science? Or does that sound to you like conspiracy theory? Pharmaceutical companies are reaping vast profits without adequate independent scrutiny of their scientific claims. Reasonable assertion. The purpose of regulators is not to dance to the tune of rich global corporations and enrich them further. Oh, no, actually, That is the purpose of regulators, because the regulators are often funded by those very pharmaceutical bodies. You can check that out for yourself. It literally is to dance to their tune. It shouldn't be, but it is. It is to protect the health of the populations. Oh yeah, no, I remember now. We need complete data transparency for all studies. We need it in the public interest, and we need it now. So there you go. There's another idea that could be put forward. How about complete transparency? Oh no, you wouldn't understand that. Not you. The public. You are the public. I am the public. That's who we are. You're the public. They won't understand. They're stupid. And then if you sort of spend time doing your own research, looking stuff up on the internet. Oh yeah, did you do your own research? Oh, you little dummy, you idiot, you conspiracy theory. Well, I'd happily look at their research, but I'm not allowed to, because I'll be dead by then. In November 2021, Pfizer CEO Albert Bourla, should have been a baller, wish I'd been a bit taller, wish I'd worked for Pfizer, don't tell no lies, said people who spread misinformation on COVID-19 vaccine were criminals. Well, I'll tell you who are criminals. Many of the pharmaceutical companies that made the vaccines. The irony, the literal irony. Well, what I would suggest is that we have transparency around matters of public health. In fact, I'm not suggesting it. I'm agreeing with the British Medical Journal. They're suggesting it. I'm agreeing with it. And doesn't that show that there could be the healthy and vital use of expert opinion in creating a fairer, more democratic, more transparent society that all of us could participate in together without leaning into the easy, lazy condemnation of marginalised groups or individuals that for their own reason have selected to be sceptical about a medical product which the British Medical Journal has said has been unethically handled. But that's just what I think. Let me know in the comments below what you think. Tell us what question.
Please check out Russell Brand's channel to honor this video, because yeah, there's a lot of information, and if you for those that are our audio listeners, the reason why we chose this clip, or I guess this clip was chosen, or I'm happy to share this clip, is there is he shows the quotes of what he reads, and then he shows the source of where he's getting it from. And these days, I feel like it's really, really important. That's the reason why we have the format of our show. It looks like a newspaper, etc., etc. Let's read the message that was attached to this clip. Dear time-traveling minister, can we talk about why it's so hard to talk about vaccines? I have a clip from Russell Brand to make this info more palpable. I cannot believe it's been this long and we still don't know enough about the origins of this virus. Actually, I checked out the next clip. I think you'll like it because it's very recent. And it's done by a central source. I appreciate that too. Oh, that's there forever. Anyway, so much stuff happened. I worry. But I am calm because of your voice, platform, and show. Oh, thank you. Love you. I love you. Hope you figure out the routine to put out more content. Sincerely, Jimmy Bro Yang. That one was a good one. I love it. All right. So here's my thoughts on that. What you guys watched there was a clip from Russell Brand. He started as, obviously, we remember him. We could look back. That's the power of the internet we have. We could look back, and then we could see the paths that people take and where it leads to. And generations after us will always be able to see what's good and bad about the decisions we made in the past. And this is a good thing. A lot of people out there, I feel like there's two schools there's two schools out there. There's a school where people basically define you from the sins of your past. And then there's a school where they understand that life is long, so we can learn from our experiences and our mistakes. And all of it comes together in a way that gives life meaning. And that meaning that we find, we should be sharing it on social media for generations to come. This is why our part of our messaging is the idea of creating the best environment for the kids of our kids. That is pretty much our end game. We're not going to throw it out there and then ask for money yet. We want to conceptualize it first. We're not going to do it like the Green New Deal style that we've become accustomed to in these last few years. Like, man, I have no animosity towards you. I just have to say, like, that's what we asked for. And it sounded so good. Like, of course we fell for it. Of course we fell for it. It sounded really, really good, but we didn't have the infrastructure to handle it. I heard somewhere that if we all went on electric cars, there's a high probability that the electric companies that power us won't be able to handle this because it takes a lot of energy to charge up those cars. So, I mean, there's a plus and a minus, but I also have to be thankful for the fact that we're in this position to ask these questions, or actually, I should say, pose these questions to the next generation, and do our best in this generation, the millennial generation, and everybody else, and do our best to create the best environment for the very finite formative years of our youth. Anyways, I think that's a good way to introduce the next clip. Here we go. This one shows Pfizer data finally being released. That's what okay, cool. Yeah, so it's like it all makes what's it called? A nice little circle. This one shows Pfizer data finally being released. Natural immunity real? Viable? Let's check it out.
Kim, what's on your radar?
Well, another round of Pfizer documents have dropped. This is part of the 340,000 some odd pages the FDA and Pfizer wanted to release over the course of several decades. But instead, the group requesting the documents sued, and a judge ordered the FDA to make them available by the end of this year. Well, each round of documents is to be delivered on the 1st of each month. So this past April 1st, no joke, over 11,000 pages were released.
I will let you guys know that as this is being recorded, this video has received over almost 1 million views. It was released April 4, 2022. It's by The Hill, and they have 1.5 million subscribers. I say that as if that's credibility, but honestly, really, it once you get past 1 million, that's credibility, I feel. So let's go ahead and see the rest of this clip.
Between these documents and another document released on March 24th to the group, a group called Public Health and Medical Professionals for Transparency, we've learned some bombshells. The first bombshell in the document is that natural immunity works and Pfizer knows it. The clinical trial data showed those with previous infection of COVID had no difference in outcome.
All right, so let's do the disclaimer thing. This is information that you need to check by yourself. Vaccine information is always out there, so and misinformation is also out there too. So, disclaimer, check things out on yourself. This is an opinion of somebody of the
than those vaccinated. In the limited trial, none of the vaccinated nor those with previous infection resulted in severe disease defined by either the FDA or the CDC. They were broken up into two different groups. The FDA and the CDC define severe COVID slightly differently. The CDC roughly defines it as anyone needing hospitalization, whereas the FDA defines it as anyone needing supplemental oxygen. Either way, there were 0 cases of severe COVID in the natural immunity group, whether they were vaccinated or not. And their own data also showed that natural immunity was statistically identical to the vaccine against infection. That's what their data showed. Yet, rather than say people with natural immunity don't seem to need the vaccine, which is what they've been saying in Europe, for example, Pfizer instead spun their conclusion and said, quote, final efficacy results show that the vaccine provided protection against COVID-19 in participants with or without evidence of prior infection with SARS-CoV-2. Another revelation from the documents was that adverse reactions were more frequent and more severe in younger groups. The document reads, quote, reactogenicity and adverse events were generally milder and less frequent in participants in the older group compared with younger group, and overall tended to increase with increasing vaccine dose.
Hold up, I gotta stop that there, because here my journalism teacher is screaming in my head right now. FYI, this little highlight is just a highlight of the document, but obviously who wants to read 340,000 pages of research? And this is just a study, okay? This is a study that Pfizer conducted, and but hey, we all saw that last video with Russell Brand where he was talking about where Pfizer was asking for 75 years before we could see this data. And now we could see it. And that, for me, that makes me mad. Because if had I known that, I would... let's just talk. Let's check out the rest
older
of this clip.
Is defined as 55 and older, and the study itself was for 16 and above. So the side effects were more frequent and more severe in people under 55, even though we know the younger you are, the less likely you're to experience severe COVID. According to The Lancet, 16-year-olds have a 99.993% chance of surviving COVID. A 30-year-old is at 99.943%. At 50, their survivability is 99.572%. Only once you hit 60 does it drop below 99%. A document procured during the dump was a consent form for a children's clinical trial of the Pfizer vaccine. The form is from December 15th, 2021, so only 15 weeks ago. And it interestingly states some facts that have been labeled by the mainstream media as being misinformation. The consent form lists several possible side effects, including myocarditis, which many of us know about. But the document says the rate of occurrence is 10 in 100,000 people. And they don't specify age or gender. So that's much higher than previously reported rates of 1 in 50,000 people. Even then, we know the bulk of those cases are in younger males. So when controlling for age and gender, the risk significantly increases. The consent form also states, quote, the effects of the COVID-19 vaccine on sperm, a pregnancy, a fetus, or a nursing child are not known. And this is something that has caused a lot of younger women and parents of teen girls hesitation, which they were demonized over. And people have worried that there could be long-term side effects affecting fertility. Despite these scientists admitting in this consent form that they simply do not know, it has been espoused as fact that the vaccines don't have any adverse effects on reproduction whatsoever. But the fact is, we simply don't know. Another idea condemned as a conspiracy theory is what's called an ADE response, antibody-dependent reaction. This is when a vaccine ends up triggering a worse illness than what the person would normally experience. And doctors like Robert Malone, who have been sounding the alarm of this as a possible reaction to mRNA vaccines, have been demonized and smeared, yet the consent form clearly states, quote, although not seen to date, it cannot yet be ruled out that the study vaccine could make a later COVID-19 illness more severe.
The person that she just referenced, Robert Malone, even if you just look him up, you'll see that his career was demolished because he spoke against. Well, he didn't spoke against it. He just spoke what he knows about it, and just because he's a voice of he's an expert voice, an expert opinion, people feel that he was demonized enough to the point where like you probably don't even hear about him. You probably don't even know who he is at the time of filming this, and that's one of the reasons why the show exists. Thank you guys very much for sending me your clips. I really appreciate your ideas and where this show could go. I please participate. Give me something to respond to in the comments, and I'll be there. I know I'm not good with emotional intelligence, but I promise you that I do want this to be a good community of people that want the best environment for the kids of our kids. So that it's just bonkers to hear this again, because I mean, this video was released April 4 of this year, 2022, and we all were there during the 2020s when we were all hooked on our screens, either distracting ourselves with unimportant information or information that would just fuel our anxieties, you know.
So if it were really not even something to be concerned about, the form wouldn't even bring it up. Yet here it is, saying they can't rule it out yet. One other interesting admission from the document dump is this statement, quote, clinical laboratory evaluations showed a transient decrease in lymphocytes that was observed in all age and dose groups after dose 1, which resolved within approximately 1 week. So in plain English, this means white blood cell counts dropped in that 1 week after the first dose of the vaccine. So this is leaving a person with a weakened immune system for a week after getting the first dose of the vaccine. So there's a lot of things that we could speculate from this, like, is this why we saw sudden spikes in cases in countries that began mass vaccination campaigns, with people weakened immune systems, where they're all catching the virus a lot more vulnerable to catching the virus suddenly for that little period of time. Also, since people weren't even considered partially vaccinated until a week or so after getting the dose, did this skew the infection rate? If you got a bunch of immunocompromised people for that week running around and then catching the virus, and then they're considered unvaccinated, is that fair? These are questions that kind of leads us towards. But in the least, it seems like this would be good information for people to know about. Wouldn't you want to know that your immune system is perhaps compromised for a week? You'd maybe be more careful. We're at least learning about it now, even though we didn't know about it before, but now we're learning about it because of the data the FDA and Pfizer didn't want released. We're finally seeing it. So interesting stuff coming out in these document dumps. And I think obviously at this point, a lot of this is just hindsight, right? Although there are still a lot of implications, there's a lot of places still doing mandates. A lot of the colleges are still doing mandates. And now we see from these documents that from the trial, Pfizer even said there's more adverse reactions and they're more severe. The younger you are and the more you dose. And we just don't have long-term data yet. And they admit that in these documents yet. I think I don't know if it was.
This is the reason why I appreciate the Hill's reporting, because this would be the evolution of how we would get our news. We get I forget where I heard this, but I know that I could find this. People get their news by podcast these days. So the way how the Hill kind of adapted was they would give the information the way how news or outlets would do, and then they would have a conversation with their panel, with their newscast, literally a cast of newscasters.
I feel like when I go back and look at all the statements that Pfizer made, I don't feel like they said much different than actually what's in these papers. It's just that they didn't correct when, let's say, Fauci or FDA spokespeople or, Rochelle Walensky, or when they kind of said things that were maybe a bit counter to this, they didn't come out and say, that's actually not accurate. So I'm not sure if it, where the blame then goes. And also I think we need to look forward and say, maybe we should be reevaluating a lot of the decisions, especially when it comes to younger people.
The pharmaceutical industry is not used to transparency. Like it's not their preferred approach. And I think particularly in a pandemic where public health becomes almost as important as the way that you're specifically treating it, because you need the public to be invested in and to trust what they're being told by public health officials and by everybody involved. Transparency becomes that much more important. So they really shouldn't be. I really wish they had not fought this. And the more pressure on them to release all of the evidence of efficacy, all the evidence of side effects, everything. Just get it out there and let people study it.
And given that a combination of things that. You can certainly still contract the virus and spread it if you're vaccinated. Maybe you're less likely to do so, but vaccination is not standing in the way of, or is any other mitigation effort standing in the way of a wave coming through and everybody getting it, because we've seen that happen at least twice now. So given that, and given that the severity for younger people of the disease, it's not that bad, that there's very low death rate among young children, among the under 18, otherwise healthy people in the younger age categories, also not in that much trouble. Given those realities, I don't see how you can justify the requirement for vaccination in many of the settings where they're most likely to be required, schools, university campuses, as you mentioned. It seems, and given then also what you're raising about side effects, and even if they're mild side effects.
Yeah, it was a good point that he made, and where after this data is released, it doesn't yeah, you're right. How could you require a vaccination after this data? Where it also shows that natural immunity is strong, and it also shows that. When you take the vaccine, your white blood cell count, for those of you who don't know, white blood cells is what keeps your immune system protected. When those things drop, you're kind of vulnerable. That's the reason why she made the inference of Kim Iverson made the inference that there's probably a connection of how people the countries that got most vaccinated also had the highest cases. So. Well, we're all here to find things
even
out.
if you're kind of sick for a day or something, and then that's it.
Age of
that
retrospection.
Might end up being, for this age category, that might end up being worse than the disease. Or maybe it's not, but why shouldn't it be your choice or something you talk to a doctor about? It has to be required. It seems so hard to justify that for the groups of people most likely to have the mandates in place. Yes, beyond 50, if you have an underlying health condition, absolutely, I think the calculus totally shifts. But that's different when we're talking about the people most likely to have vaccine mandates.
Yeah, I mean, the older people, we know the older you get, the more severe COVID is for you. In fact, if you're 100 years old, so I was looking at the chart of survivability, and if you're 100 years old, you're still, believe it or not, more likely to survive COVID, but not by much. It's 57% survivability once you hit 100. But it starts to drop below 99 at 60. Well, these people are retired, in this age group. From 60 to 100, you're looking at the vast majority of them not even being working. So you're right, they're not even subject to mandates. But what this latest data dump really showed us, especially with them admitting they don't know the long-term side effects with fertility or sperm or anything like that. They don't know the long-term. They even said in the previous document dump from March, there was a document that showed they don't know the long-term side effects of even myocarditis once it subsides. So they said, yeah, most of the cases, the patient subsided, the symptoms were gone, but we don't know long-term what that means. they state that. So to have younger people, and then these documents say, yeah, the younger people and the more doses, it seems that they have more adverse events. Why would we then have young people mandated to do this?
Yeah.
It just doesn't make sense when you go through all these documents. And I think this proves that. And I think for a lot of those parents that have been fighting mandates, I think this document dump will be very consequential to them in that battle, I think in the legal battle moving forward. So I think that's where these documents come in handy is in the, also, their admittance to certain side effects like myocarditis. We know that now. My big question is, are they paying the medical bills for these patients who ended up with myocarditis? Or is that just, sorry, that's your risk. You took it, you knew that there was that risk, did you? I don't know. So why are they not then forking over the cash for those medical bills? I'm not certain if they are or they aren't, but I tend to think they're not, because I know that they were released from any sort of liability. But so I think that's what these documents are going to mean moving forward, is maybe they will be used in the anti-mandate legal defense and parents trying to prevent their children from being vaccinated, possibly.
All right, well, thank you, Kim. We'll have more.
I love that part where like production crews gotta follow the orders. Like, okay, all right, let's cut her off now. Then there's the song. Let's read the message that came attached to this clip. Dear time traveling minister, I feel I haven't heard about COVID enough. While we were locked in, all I could think about is 99% survival rate and fast-tracked vaccine. I ultimately didn't take it because I couldn't handle the anxiety of a decision you could never get back with data like that. 99% survival rate, and I wasn't in a danger group. So I figured I'll wait till the data is out. And it's out. I want to see you watch it and tell me how not to be an asshole for being happy with my decision. Sincerely, Donnie Brassbro. I love this show. I love this platform. I love that this idea came out of nowhere, and I'm committed to it. I believe that there are people that leverage the part of our humanity, our brains, that make us fickle fad followers. And I gotta understand, like, this is the curiosity. Who made it normal to just to just do what you're told, and B, demonize people that question what they're told? However, I also remember going to a museum and feeling really, really disgusted knowing that my ancestors, this is a museum that was focusing on Rome, my ancestors, my intellectual ancestors believed that it was okay. See, this is what happened in Rome before plumbing. In order for you to go number 2 and do your dookies, you had to go to, like, it was normal to go into a public bathroom where everybody shared one sponge with dipped in vinegar to wipe. And imagine the person that thought about a bidet, or using an aqueduct to make a bidet, or the people that thought about toilet paper, or if there was any other idea, there would still be a section of people like, no, this is normal, waving their sponge in their face as they're talking about it. It's normal. So it's weird that, like, remember, we are fickle fad followers. At the end of the day, we appreciate what's normal and convenient based on the information that we know. And eventually we found out, oh yes, fecal matter does contribute to a lot of disease and illness. Maybe we shouldn't share. So that's the thing. I tell you guys that part because, look, we're all here ready to learn. And the truth is, anything before the 1800s, life before the 1800s really, really sucks. Really, really sucked. So when I look at the technology, and also what my nephew had pointed out to me about social media, the fact that we could talk to each other from across the globe using an AI that would probably translate what we're talking about. Maybe we're just getting used to that idea, and then eventually we'll build that utopia that also caters and allows for feelings of individuality to exist. Because that's, for me, that's my fear of utopia. It always sounds nice, but I fear losing my individuality if I 100% accept whatever rules that utopia asks for. But I do also believe that we're in a big giant world, and there's innovations happening every day. As long as we have the idea makers being promoted, and idea makers being the pedestal that we all look up to, so that we all unite in good ideas. You know what I'm saying? Do I have anything else to say? Oh, what you just saw right now, all 3 clips, that's the reason why we call the show World Peace for free. Because there's so much data out there, and there's a lot of content makers, but only our audience could send us clips that they feel is important. And I do my best to just find the clips that are easily presentable in our format for the people that want to be informed, but also want to build the best possible future for the kids of our kids. And I think that's my attention limit for reflection. Here in the age of retrospection, if you saw an ad, then there's skullduggery afoot, because we refuse YouTube ad money. Please subscribe so we can be the biggest YouTube channel not part of the ad money program. Remember, you are loved, missed, and thought about every day. Take care, future people. Turn off recording. I forgot that last part, and that was a lot on my hard drive. Alrighty.